Loser boy falls for a beautiful girl, and one day, he recognizes her pet wandering the street. But just as Truck-kun is about to strike, he jumps in to save them both, instead of getting hit. He tumbles off a cliff only to find himself starting life all over again. A wounded boy, lost and confused, runs for his life from monsters that are hot on his trail. He has no idea what these creatures are, but he manages to dodge a punch that would almost certainly have killed him. For a moment, he manages to put some distance between himself and the monsters until a mysterious girl suddenly grabs his arm and pulls him behind a boulder. After a few tense seconds, it seems like the monsters have left. The boy thanks her for saving him, but then notices a tiny creature poking its head out from under the girl's dress. When he sees the girl laughing uncontrollably, he's quick to insist that he's not scared. In fact, he swears he'd have crushed those monsters if he wasn't injured. If that's the case, the girl says, she'll be waiting for him to rescue her next time with all that extraordinary strength. When she winks at him, he falls hopelessly in love, and, working up his courage, takes her hand and finally confesses his feelings. But just as he manages to blurt it out, he wakes up from the dream he was having. Two guys next to him tease him, saying it must have been a great dream. Surrounded by a gang wielding baseball bats, one of them promises the boy will meet his maker for strutting into their turf like he owned the place. Still, the captive boy doesn't seem fazed by any of it. If anything, he just regrets that, for the 1,000th time, he failed to confess his feelings to the girl he loves even if it was only in a dream. The thugs joke that he's taking the phrase, "girl of your dreams," a bit too literally. The boy responds by kicking one of them and declaring, for the record, that she isn't just a dream. Naturally, the goons don't take that well. One of them swings a club at his head, but he manages to dodge and counters with a headbutt to the attacker's chin. After pulling off this stunt, the boy still tied up recites a motto from the Narahira family. Never admit defeat until you're dead. Never admit defeat, not even when you're dead. In other words, Narahira Takeru never loses. Sure enough, the attackers rush him one by one, and even tied up, he manages to hold his own. Some time later, Narahira is seen riding away on a motorcycle, having escaped those losers. He swears to himself that he'll keep his promise forever. He'll find the girl he loves, no matter what. Along the way, he crosses the road and spots the same little creature that belonged to that girl. Instantly, he slams on the brakes, trying to figure out what in the world is happening. When the animal scurries off down the road, he takes off after it. Suddenly, a truck barrels toward the animal, but Narahira leaps in at the last second and saves it only to tumble down the side of the mountain himself. Instead of being seriously hurt, though, he wakes up somewhere completely different, and the girl he'd been talking about is right there in front of him. Grinning from ear to ear, Narahira introduces himself as the guy she once saved, but the girl seems to have no idea who he is. In fact, the two of them are standing on a stage, mid-performance, when her little pet falls out of the sky and lands squarely on Narahira's head, sending him crashing face first into the poor girl's chest, earning a loud scream. In the audience, a green-haired girl bursts out laughing, convinced this must be part of the play, but the blue-haired girl insists that this definitely wasn't in the script. Fed up, she turns to Sei, asking if this wasn't way more fun than those boring dances, and Sei couldn't agree more. Still, since today is a special day, he figures he ought to get things under control. So, he triggers a gadget hidden in his hand, shooting out a rope that ties Narahira to the stage. As much as he admires the chaos this guy brought to the show, it's time to sort things out. Finally, the girl Narahira loves slaps him and tells him to get lost. Kicked out, Narahira finds himself out on the street, mulling over how the girl must hate him now, and trying to figure out a way to turn things around. Up ahead, he spots a little boy munching on a kebab, so Narahira walks over to ask if they sell that at the convenience store. The kid has absolutely no idea what he's talking about. Still unsatisfied, Narahira wanders into some random shop and tries to figure out how to buy anything in this place. The clerk pulls up some kind of interface showing the kingdom's currency, and when Narahira tries to open his banking app on his dead phone, he gets booted out of the store. Frustrated, the outsider asks the first person he sees where they are, and the man replies, "This is Joe 7, on Bojo Lane, Denji Hyankayo." Still baffled, Narahira wanders off to a part of town that feels oddly familiar. Maybe he's gone back in time, or something like that. Lost in thought, he's suddenly snapped back to reality by a public announcement. A wave of black mist is about to hit in 1 minute, and everyone must head to the evacuation gate immediately. Caught off guard, Narahira gets stuck outside the safe zone along with a handful of others, as the mist begins to sweep across the area. Nearby, he sees a child about to be swallowed up by the dark fog. Instinctively, Narahira throws himself over the kid to shield them. As the mist closes in, both Narahira and the child are sucked into what feels like an alternate reality. The kid is completely petrified, just like everyone else around them. Alone now, Narahira tries to figure out if any of these people are still alive, when a massive monster appears and starts destroying the frozen citizens. Despite the creature's size and fury, Narahira doesn't back down. He stands his ground and orders the monster to leave them alone. Drawn by his challenge, the giant blasts him with a devastating attack. Somehow, Narahira survives, though badly wounded. He figures he's not going to die that easily, but just as he's catching his breath, the monster launches another attack. And once again, Narahira finds himself face to face with power beyond anything he's ever seen. But this time, a robot appears and lands a punch so powerful that it sends the giant flying several yards away. Impressed, Narahira stares at this mysterious savior in awe. At the same time, the people controlling the robot are trying to figure out how this kid managed not to get petrified, even while standing inside the black mist. That's when the robot announces that the human should stay where he is. It'll keep the Oni at bay. Defying expectations, Narahira stands his ground and declares that if that beast comes back, he'll kick its butt himself. And sure enough, the Oni jumps back into the fight. But the robot insists the kid stay behind. Since they're both piloting the machine, Yuna calls Atsunaga into action, and together they unleash the 5 elements. The Oni rolls toward them, ready to attack. But the robot counters with the 5 thunders, a powerful move that manages to defeat the opponent. From the control room, the blue-haired girl who was watching the whole thing earlier suddenly realizes Narahira is the same kid who crashed the stage. With the black mist finally dissipated, the authorities arrive to tend to the wounded. The 2 robot pilots approach the boy who somehow avoided being petrified, wanting to see if he's alright. Even after being saved, Narahira acts cocky, claiming they only got in the way of the beating he was about to give the giant. This arrogance nearly pushes Yuna over the edge, and she almost lunges at the kid. Atsunaga jumps in to break up the tension before it turns into a real fight. Grabbing Narahira's shoulder, he admits it's wild that the boy was able to walk through the black mist, but that doesn't mean he'd stand a chance against an Oni after all. He's not an Onmyoji. Before he can explain what that means, he's called away. Nearby, the girl Narahira had seen turn to stone in his arms is alive and well, and relief spreads across his face as he breaks into a smile. Wandering the streets of Heian-Kaiyo, totally confused, young Takeru tries to cheer himself up by recalling a saying from the Narahira family, "Don't think until you've eaten." That's when the girl from his dreams reappears, looking annoyed now that she recognizes him. She scolds him for ruining an important play, especially since even the Emperor's chief advisor was in the audience. Still, she's kind enough to notice he's hurt and decides to help him out. She takes him to a place where she offers him some food. While they eat, he shares his story, and by now, she's pieced together that he's from another world. She's amazed when he tells her he managed to walk through the black mist, something that's never happened before. Curious, Narahira asks what the mist and the Oni are. A man sitting nearby explains that Oni are humanity's enemies from another world, and the black mist is a phenomenon that happens when these monsters invade. Guessing that Narahira must be desperate to get home, the girl says an Onmyoji could probably make that happen. But Narahira scoffs at the idea, especially since he didn't like Atsunaga and Yuna. The man nearby is offended and explains that Onmyoji are the reason the city still stands. They're the ones who control the Shikigami. Another woman adds that the leader of the Onmyoji is Abino Seimei. For some reason, Narahira misreads the name as Anbai Hariaki. Later that night, Narahira lies awake in bed, unable to sleep. Outside the house where he's staying, the girl from his dreams dances beneath a beam of light, surrounded by the shadows of night. Thinking it's the perfect moment, he goes outside, claps his hands to praise her performance, and she just smiles, asking if they've met before. Narahira says yes and reminds her that he promised to become stronger so he could protect her. She promises not to forget something that important next time, and finally introduces herself as Tsukamiya. By morning, on the second day of the festival, Narahira is helping out with some chores when he spots the Imperial Advisor's messenger approaching, the same guy who's here because of what happened yesterday. talking to Tsukumiya. The messenger complains about how the show turned into a total disaster when someone crashed the stage. The advisor is furious, claiming the whole thing was unworthy of the grand pandemonium ritual. Now, the advisor wants Tsukumiya to come to the palace and apologize in person. That's when Narahira steps in, confessing that he's the one who ruined the show. The messenger ignores him, insisting that Tsukumiya come along. Narahira tries again to confess, but is stopped once more by Abino Seimei. Narahira calls him Anbai Hariaki, and Seimei laughs, saying lots of people misread his name that way. After detaining Narahira, the chief Onmyoji leans in and reassures Tsukumiya that everything will be fine, and she seems to trust him. Later, as they leave in an air car, the green-haired girl asks Seimei if he minds that the kid is so strange. He just shrugs it off. Suddenly, another black mist alert goes off throughout the city. In 20 seconds, Heian Kaiō will be swallowed by darkness once again, because the city's in the middle of the grand pandemonium. The warnings are even slower than usual, and the mist sweeps in, hitting the cloud carriage Tsukumiya is riding in. Seeing his friend in danger, Narahira grabs the first weapon he can find and sprints toward the chaos after all. He did promise he'd save her, no matter what. Inside the mist, Yuna and Atsunaga are holding off the invading Oni. Meanwhile, Narahira navigates the treacherous, otherworldly terrain, searching for his friend, until he finally spots the wrecked vehicle. While the Onmyoji attempt to attack the giant enemy, they're caught off guard by a counterattack. The Oni conjures a series of connected escape gates, allowing it to jump through portals and strike by surprise, a tactic that proves devastating as the Shikigami gets hit again and again, unable to respond. To make matters worse, just as he neared the petrified Tsukumiya, the Oni finished his flurry of attacks with a devastating blast aimed at the robot. The impact was so severe, it damaged the robot's spiritual reactor. In this critical moment, Sei rushed to the control room to check in with Kazuura and find out how the battle was going. Out on the battlefield, the Oni was seconds away from finishing off both the Shikigami and the petrified Tsukumiya for good until, at the very last second, Narahira appeared and struck the monster with his weapon. Everyone was left speechless by the sudden intervention of that kid, who once again had emerged from the black mist, everyone except Sei, who just flashed a sarcastic smile. Feeling more powerful than ever, Narahira tried to keep up the offensive, but the giant Oni caught him, crushed him brutally, and then hurled him to the ground with overwhelming force. In the end, the Oni put some distance between them, leaving the human shattered on the ground. But somehow, as if by magic, Narahira's serious wounds seemed to heal in an instant. Now at a safe distance, the monster readied another one of its devastating blasts. Struggling to his feet, Narahira repeated his family's motto: "Never admit defeat until you're dead. Don't admit defeat, even then." With those words in mind, he charged headlong into the path of the Oni's cannon blast and countered its full force with a staggering punch. The moment his fist landed, Narahira transformed. Armored in that unstoppable shell, he delivered a blow that brought the fight to a crushing end. Back in the control room, Sei watched it all unfold with a smile, finally admitting to himself that this kid was something special. Inside the mist, Narahira returned to his original form and breathed a sigh of relief to see his friend still in one piece. But then, the Oni's core rose up from the ground beneath them, and a gate appeared, shattering Tsukumiya. Moments later, another Oni reappeared and drove its claws through Narahira's torso from behind. In the very next scene, the boy wakes up in a panic, right back in the same situation he'd been in when he first arrived in this world. Seeing Tsukumiya alive right in front of him, the boy jumps up, overwhelmed with joy, and bursts into tears. But then, the girl suddenly lets out a scream loud enough to wake up the whole block. In no time, Uncle Wada storms in, bamboo stick in hand, ready to sort things out. But as it turns out, it's not Wada who's keeping Takeru in check, it's Atsunaga's hidden blades, with Atsunaga himself hiding behind the stage decorations. Tsukumiya, by the way, asks what he's doing back there, and, embarrassed, he just mumbles that he was passing through. Takeru keeps trying every way he can to convince his friend it's really him. But Tsukumiya insists she has no idea who this guy is. Later on, over at the Onmyo agency, Seimei gets a heads up that it's almost time for the chief counselor's Kemari game. Completely uninterested, the leader asks Kazuura to go in his place, while Shino, on the other hand, is all too happy to volunteer for the task. Meanwhile, Takeru is still desperately trying to get Atsunaga to let him go, insisting he knows Tsukumiya, which, of course, the officer refuses to believe. Watching from a distance, Shino wonders if there's a monkey in that cage, and Seimei wants a closer look. Takeru swears up and down that he knows Tsukumiya from his dreams, and Atsunaga says that this beautiful girl also visits his own dreams from time to time. When the three Onmyoji arrive, the prisoner calls the leader Haryaku again, which prompts Shino to correct him with the chief's actual name. Takeru was really hoping this guy would recognize him. But Seimei has no idea who this interdimensional invader is either. Switching gears, Takeru claims he fought an Oni in the Black Mist and got impaled by it, and that's when he found himself on that stage. Atsunaga takes offense at the idea that this kid faced an Oni alone. So Takeru raises his voice and insists he sent the beast flying with his own fist. For his part, Seimei doesn't rule out the possibility that the boy's telling the truth. The prisoner goes on to reveal another Narahira family motto. Trust isn't built with words, it has to be proven through serious actions. And so, he asks for the chance to fight an Onmyoji, face to face. Wish granted. In the very next scene, the kid is left panting and exhausted. Yura wants to know what they're even doing there. It's already been half an hour. Seimei explains that the prisoner is trying to show off his powers, since he's a candidate to join the 5 stars. But as far as he can tell, the guy chickened out at the last second. With that, Yuna lands a kick right to the poor kid's face and tells him to show some respect for the Onmyoji. Disappointed, Seimei loses patience and decides to let the prisoner go after a few more questions. Cut to the next scene. Takeru is sprinting through the city like a maniac, all bandaged up, but stops in his tracks when he sees the place where the festival stage should be. For some reason, everything is taken down, and Tsukumiya and the others don't remember him at all. Looking at a poster, Takeru realizes there are still 15 days left until the festival. In other words, he's ended up back before the girl of his dreams was killed. Speaking of her, Tsukumiya shows up again, pointing out that he's the guy from earlier, trying to act casual. He asks if the stage has ever been built here before, and she's baffled apparently. That structure has been standing for over a century, built for every centenary pandemonium. As for the event itself, she explains that the Emperor's chief counselor will be watching the first performance. Takeru remembers who that is and asks when the guy's supposed to arrive. Tsukumiya says it'll be in 15 days, and suddenly it all clicks for Takeru this time. He swears he'll do whatever it takes to protect her. Walking away, he realizes he really has gone back to before that fateful day, and that Tsukumiya died on the day the counselor came to see the show, which means Takeru Narahira has exactly 2 weeks to get strong enough to stop it from happening. With that in mind, he heads straight to the supposed Haryaku and asks to be taught all about this Onmyo business. After all, the leader of the pilots would definitely be interested in someone who defeated an Oni single-handedly. Joining forces could be a huge advantage. Kazura accuses him of bluffing after embarrassing himself earlier, and Seimei also wants to know where this kid gets his confidence. Either way, he agrees to help Takeru after all. It took guts to come back after the humiliation he suffered, and that's a quality the leader genuinely admires. On the flip side, Takeru now has just 1 week to prove he's not a fraud. No time to waste. The very next day, Kazura teaches Takeru that Onmyo techniques are all about channeling spiritual power to convert the 5 spirits: water, wood, fire, metal, and earth, allowing for all kinds of effects. Almost everyone is born with spiritual power, but only those with real aptitude can master these techniques, and that takes years of dedicated training. After hours of this, both Takeru and Shino are completely over it. The invader interrupts the lesson to ask how to use that Shikigami thing. So, Kazura introduces him to the Godai doll, a spiritual training vessel. If Takeru wants to control a Shikigami, he needs to channel his spiritual power and get the Godai to stand up. For demonstration, Kazura pours spiritual power into her divining glove and makes the doll move. After that, Takeru is left alone with the doll he's supposed to call the teacher only after he gets it to move. Confident as ever, he focuses on his glove and presses it against the doll's back. But nothing. Hours later, outside the classroom, he's still trying to get Godai to stand, only growing more frustrated with every failed attempt. Atsunaga finds him in the courtyard and asks why he came back when he was already set free, even though he admits Takeru's story is hard to believe. The pilot is curious about what's driving him to prove himself so desperately. Takeru, for his part, says it doesn't matter anymore. All that matters now is getting stronger so he can protect what's important to him. Hearing this, Atsunaga points out that the kid doesn't even have the basics down to control a Shikigami. So, to help him reach that level, the Onmyoji places a hand on Takeru's back, forcibly expanding his capacity. Takeru asks if he'll get even stronger than this, and the pilot says he will if he has enough determination to withstand the pain. With that, Takeru tells him to go for it. But the suffering turns out to be way worse than he ever expected. Later at home, with a pendant in hand, Atsunaga admits that you can't protect anything unless you're strong. Suddenly, Takeru sneaks up behind him and startles the guy by asking if he's a Tsukumiya fan too. The pilot snaps back, demanding to know what this fool is doing in his house. So Takeru explains that he has nowhere else to go and thought maybe he could crash at his great friend's place. Atsunaga says he's not about to let some grown man freeload under his roof. So Takeru reveals that the only person he knows here besides Atsunaga is Tsukumiya, and heads for the door, planning to ask her for a place to stay. Faced with the situation, the onmyoji gives in and lets the drifter stay, and the homeless guest pays him back by whipping up a phenomenal meal. Sitting at the table, Yura wonders aloud why she was even invited, and Takeru explains that it's a gyoza party everyone's supposed to dig in while it's hot. Skeptical, Yura insists there's no way some slacker like him could have cooked anything good, but as soon as she tastes it, she's forced to reconsider. In the next scene, Yura heads out, arms loaded with leftover lunchboxes, and makes it clear that just because the kid can cook, that doesn't mean she's suddenly a fan. Shifting gears, Atsunaga asks Takeru who he wants to protect, and Takeru confesses it's Tsukumiya. So the two of them sit down for a serious talk about the situation, and the pilot learns that his uninvited guest is, in fact, a time traveler who knows that Tsukumiya will die in 15 days. Atsunaga, being honest, says the whole story is too wild to buy just like that. But there's one thing he's sure of. It won't be Takeru who protects Tsuki, it'll be him. Hearing every word, Takeru fires back that Atsunaga can talk all he wants, he'll prove himself through action. With sparks flying between them, a showdown is inevitable. In the ring, the time traveler tries every trick in the book to land a punch, but every strike backfires. Atsunaga barely even breaks a sweat. At one point, Atsunaga activates his solid body technique just as he's attacked, forcing his opponent to punch a shield and get knocked down in the process. As he explains, this too is the power of technique. 3 days later, Takeru begins to learn about the power of Riki, one of the 5 systems of Onmyo technique. Riki are skills that strengthen the body, like the solid body, which can be used for both defense and offense. Eager to master it, the boy is quickly warned by his teacher, it'll take at least a year. After the lesson, chatting together, Yura asks Atsunaga how long he plans to keep hanging around with that idiot, especially since he wants to be chosen as one of the 5 stars. Atsunaga replies that he's got things to learn from Takeru too, but Yura pushes harder, accusing him of hiding something from her. Why else give so much attention to that brat? In the middle of their argument, a red alarm blares, followed by an announcement. A black mist is going to appear in 1 minute. Over in the control room, Kazura quickly calculates that this mist has a concealment level of 3.6 moderate. Takeru bursts in and announces he's joining the onmyoji in the black mist, which offends everyone with his bravado. Still, the time traveler insists he can go in without a Shikigami. He's already reached the point where he can use the power of Riki. Hearing this, Atsunaga promptly shoves the kid back with a Riki technique, declaring he doesn't have what it takes. If he can't even pull off something like this, he's not qualified to fight in the black mist. Refusing to back down, Takeru decides to prove, by force, that he can fight. Instead, he wakes up in bed, with the man who knocked him out standing nearby. Still groggy, Takeru asks what happened to the black mist, and the onmyoji tells him he and Yura took care of it. Furious at being sidelined, Takeru is told by Atsunaga to come with him. The two head out to a part of the city that was devastated by the Black Mist 3 years ago, a battle where many onmyoji lost their lives. Atsunaga was a rookie back then, and his Shikigami was damaged due to a mistake he made. Because of it, he was forced to leave the fight, abandoning his superior. To make up for that error, his commanding officer fought alone and was killed. Atsunaga explains, if you lose a battle in the Black Mist, things that have always existed can vanish in an instant. And if you go in unprepared, you risk losing everything. An onmyoji's duty is to risk their own life to destroy the Oni. And as much as Takeru claims he has someone to protect, so does Atsunaga. So if the kid gets in his way, the pilot won't show any mercy. Not far away, Yura overhears their conversation. That night, Takeru isolates himself, seething over everything he heard earlier. A week after Takeru and Seimei made their deal, the leader of the onmyoji is informed that the intruder has run off. According to Kazura, it's been a few days since he showed up for training. Given the circumstances, the boss concludes he misjudged the kid. Meanwhile, Shino's eye alert suddenly goes off. At the same time, the city's POS system blares, a black mist will arrive in 30 seconds, and Takeru is seen standing in the middle of a panicked crowd. With the concealment level at 5.6, a bit higher than last time, Kazura sends out the pedestal and orders Atsunaga and Yura to summon their Shikigami. With that, the Onmyoji assume their roles and prepare for battle inside Denji Hyankaio's robotic unit. Inside the ominous mist, the pair spot an Oni who controls a swarm of puppets remotely using drums. Yura takes command of the Shikigami and tells her partner to use this time to prepare a lightning technique. So, when the puppets come flying at the robot, Yura casts premonition vision and predicts every movement, taking out each puppet as it approaches. Watching her display of skill, Kazura can't help but remark that's a true candidate for the 5 stars. At that moment, Atsunaga readied his thunder power, but just as he was about to unleash it, he was caught off guard by a sudden lunge from the Oni, who dragged the Shikigami away and struck with such force that Yura was knocked right out of the black mist, leaving Atsunaga alone on the battlefield. That blow was so powerful, it significantly weakened his spiritual energy. From the command room, the order was clear. Atsunaga had to retreat, but escape was impossible. Enemy puppets were blocking every way out. Faced with overwhelming odds, the officer uttered a single phrase, "One mind, dedicated to a vow." Hearing those words, everyone in the control room could hardly believe Atsunaga was really going to do it. But the man was willing to risk everything to protect Denji Hyankaio. Calling upon the full might of the Thunder God, he unleashed a devastating attack, even as the Oni charged straight toward him. At that exact moment, Takeru leapt between them, used his solid body technique to push Atsunaga aside, and delivered a punch to the Oni so fierce, it sent the monster flying like a baseball. The room fell silent, jaws dropping at the sheer strength Takeru had just displayed. Without missing a beat, he repeated his family's motto, "Trust is earned through actions, not words." Impressed, Atsunaga invited him to join inside the Shikigami, explaining that when 2 people fight together, the robot's true power can finally be unleashed. Takeru didn't hesitate. He jumped right in, and together they synchronized perfectly, responding to the Oni's wave of puppets as a seamless unit. When it was time to strike back, Takeru unleashed such overwhelming power through the Shikigami that even its appearance shifted, becoming a more monstrous version of itself. With a thunderous blow, the duo landed a punch on the Oni that ended the fight in an instant. The sheer brutality left everyone stunned. With the battle won, Takeru stepped out of the black mist with his new partner, and couldn't resist teasing Yura only to get a spinning kick to the face for his trouble. Seimei quickly reminded everyone that fights between Onmyoji are forbidden, but Yura just shrugged, pointing out that this kid wasn't one of them anyway. And with that, the leader turned to Narahira Takeru and officially invited him to join the team. Next, Takeru is taken to the training arena to fight alongside Atsunaga against a pair of pilots. Kajiki, the big guy, scoffs at their opponents. He figures they don't stand a chance, since the rookie can barely even operate a god icon. Uruka, on the other hand, cracks a joke that maybe they ought to go easy on the weak and inexperienced. Clearly ticked off by their audacity, Takeru stands his ground and fires back, asking if these guys are shaking in their boots just because of some so-called prodigy. Atsunaga steps in, reminding everyone that this is just a practice match. Still, Takeru says that whether it's a one-on-one or not, you always give it your all. Atsunaga doesn't recognize the term one-on-one, so the camera guy explains it's when you fight head-to-head, even if today it's 2 versus 2. Meanwhile, Kazura reports to the boss that he's tried every method to investigate Narahira Takeru, but came up with nothing. That might mean the kid really did come from another world. On the other hand, Takeru has a Campanula star on his hand, a mark that only people from Denji Hyankaio are born with. Back at training, the 2 Shikigami face off in a heated duel, and Takeru takes it personally. He wants to prove to those loudmouths he's not just there for show. Using the paper veil, he and Atsunaga manage to distract their opponents and land a few hits. But Uruka and Kajiki recover quickly and put some distance between them. They respond with a swarm signal, a powerful move that could have clinched the win, if not for Atsunaga's quick thinking. He summons the fair platform to dodge the attack with finesse. Then, the war chant powers up Takeru's punch with fire, landing squarely on the enemy machine and knocking Uruka out of the fight. With Uruka down, Kajiki is left without a partner, so Yura steps up to team up with the big guy and summon another Shikigami. Sei is pumped, since now it's truly a battle between 5-star candidates. The fight kicks off again, and Yura's wild intensity is impossible to ignore. She's fighting like she's got a score to settle, barely giving her opponents a chance to breathe. Still, Atsunaga swaps places with his partner and manages to activate the paper veil to shield his robot. Then he attacks with a devastating move, 5 Thunders. Yura doesn't flinch, meeting the attack head-on, and after a huge effort, she manages to redirect the 5 Thunders skyward, almost turning Shino to dust in the process. After that maneuver, Atsunaga loses his cool and drops out of the fight, fed up with Yura's meddling. Watching the match, Kazuya laments that they didn't even catch a glimpse of Takeru's true power. Later, Yura sits down in the plaza to rehydrate, but her peace is short-lived. Takeru passes by with Atsunaga, complaining that he couldn't pull off that black punch again. Noticing Yura trying to avoid them, Atsunaga makes a point of calling out to her, saying she and Kajiki seem like a good match, and if she wants to partner up with the big guy, that's totally fine. Annoyed, Yura asks if her ex-partner likes Takeru that much, but he gets flustered and says no, it's just that he thinks she'd work well with Kajiki, since his high endurance would let her fight her way. Even so, Yura's not interested in talking and walks off, irritated. That night, Takeru cooks for his friends at Uncle Wada's place. The woman beside him asks where Atsunaga is, and Takeru explains that he's off training for the upcoming 5-star selection. Tsukumiya asks if Takeru also wants to reach the top rank of Onmyoji, but he insists that his only reason for becoming a pilot is to protect his best friend. The girl admits she's happy to hear him say that so openly, and Takeru gets a little embarrassed, but at the same time, he remembers that looming moment when his friend is torn apart by that Oni. Wanting to prevent that, he asks Tsukumiya to stay close to him after tomorrow's performance, but she can't do that. She explains that the fear of the Oni is so overwhelming. It's no wonder the whole town lives in constant panic over these terrifying creatures. Still, that's exactly why she throws herself into dancing. She wants to bring a little joy to her people in such a hard time. So she can't spare a moment from practice. She needs to prepare for more performances. Hearing his friend's heartfelt words, Takeru takes it in stride and promises to protect her no matter what. The next day, Chief Seimei proposes a crazy experiment to see if Takeru can unleash that insane power again. The plan is for Atsunaga to hit him with a 5 Thunders, and Takeru has to withstand it until he's pushed to his limit and his power breaks out. Just like before, if he gets close to death, Shino will be ready to save him, so he's never in real danger. Atsunaga thinks this is nuts. But when Takeru accepts the challenge with real enthusiasm, the pilot goes along a bit more calmly. So, Atsunaga fuses the elements to conjure the 5 Thunders. Across the ring, Takeru meets the attack with every bit of strength he's got. But despite his efforts, his skin starts getting shredded by the energy. Seeing that the kid is about to bite the dust, Kazuya shouts for the boss, who orders Shino to step in. Shino gets ready to redirect the attack, but Takeru insists he's still got this and tells her to stay back. With no time to spare, he uses what little strength remains to nullify the 5 Thunders, leaving everyone around him absolutely stunned by this rookie's extraordinary ability. To top it off, when he checks his arm, he sees he isn't even injured. After the experiment, Yura walks off on her own, furious that Takeru managed to cancel out a power she barely managed to dodge. Up ahead, she secretly overhears a conversation between 2 Onmyoji. Kazuya asks the boss if he understands Takeru's power, but the boss isn't sure, though he's starting to think this outsider might actually be worth the trouble. Surprised, Yura asks if the leader is really going to make that guy a 5-star, but Seimei quickly hushes her clearly. Yura overheard more than she should have. A day later, the most anticipated event of the year finally kicks off, and Tsukumiya's beloved image is plastered on every corner of the city. Near the stage where the show will take place, Takeru reflects on the fact that today marks the anniversary of the very first day he arrived in this world. A little before the performance, he asks Atsunaga what the true purpose of the Anis is. Atsunaga explains that these demons cross the black mist to take people and objects back to their own world as sustenance. In other words, they devour anyone they capture. That's why Atsunaga and Yura dream of being chosen as part of the 5 stars, in order to protect Denji from this fate. With that, the performance finally begins. Tsukumiya steps onto the stage, radiating beauty and charisma, bringing comfort to a population that has been waiting for this moment for so long. While Atsunaga is crying like a baby, Takeru remembers how, the first time he ended up in this world, he fell right onto the stage in the middle of the dance, which led the chief advisor to summon Tsukumiya, and that's when they were both caught by the black mist. Thinking through this chain of events, the boy suddenly leaps up in a panic, desperate to warn everyone that the black mist is about to appear. With this on his mind, he runs through the entire neighborhood, trying to alert anyone he can, but people aren't sure if he's really some kind of messenger from the future, or just another weirdo trying to get attention. Regardless, ready or not, the city's PA system suddenly broadcasts a warning that the mist is, in fact, on its way. Now everyone starts running except for the same little girl Takeru saw last time. She trips along the way and freezes up, unable to react. Determined to do things differently this time, Takeru rushes forward, grabs the girl, and manages to escape the black mist with her. The next day, having witnessed the whole scene up close, Atsunaga tells Sei that Takeru really did predict the arrival of the mist. The outsider claims he's from the future, that he saw Tsukumiya die, and that the moment he himself died, time turned back. In fact, that day is today. Atsunaga had his doubts until now, but after everything he's seen, there's no question in his mind that the boy is telling the truth. Meanwhile, during his training, Takeru finds hope in the fact that even after yesterday's mist, the little girl turned out fine. Maybe that means Tsukumiya can be saved too. Besides, since he didn't fall off the stage this time, the chief advisor won't summon her, so maybe the order of events will change. Suddenly, Yura comes up to him and asks for a minute of his time. When Takeru says he's in a hurry today, she grabs him by the collar and insists that they settle things one-on-one, just like he said earlier. No onmyo techniques, just a straight-up fight. Not one to back down, Takeru accepts the challenge. They head out to the balcony of the building to get things started. Before the fight begins, Takeru remembers that the black mist that's going to get Tsukumiya appears later, so he still has time. He asks if she just wants to fight because he stole her partner, but she says she just wants to see who's stronger. And with that, the battle is on. While Atsunaga is still emotional from Tsukumiya's performance, he can't help but worry about what he knows is coming. That's when Uncle Wada arrives with news that the chief advisor's messenger is here, and that he was so impressed with Tsukumiya's dance yesterday. He wants to reward her on the spot. Back at the 5 minutes, no hard feelings fight. Yura beats Takeru without much trouble after all. Nobody around here has a pair of legs as skilled as hers, or so she claims. And, as Takeru can feel, her punches aren't exactly gentle either. Yura shouts that he disrespected her and now he's crying, but Takeru points out he never said anything of the sort. To be honest, he can't understand why she's so angry, until she admits through tears that she always feels like she has to prove herself to stand by Atsunaga's side. But instead, that idiot pushed Kajiki to be her partner, leaving her on the sidelines out of nowhere. With tears in her eyes, Yura charges at him, convinced that, in the end, she's just getting in Atsunaga's way. Takeru, paying close attention, notices that she lowers her head, thrown off by her own emotions, giving him just the opening he needs to land a lightning-fast punch to her chin, winning the fight. As he says, there's a Narihira family motto: what you see in front of you is everything. So, if someone looks away, you attack. Head down. Yura admits that maybe this is exactly why Atsunaga's fed up with her. Then Takeru shares another family motto: don't focus only on what you can see. In other words, it doesn't matter what it looks like, there's no way Yura can know what Atsunaga feels if she doesn't ask him. Suddenly, the city's alert system warns that a black mist will arrive in just 20 seconds, much sooner than Takeru expected. He sprints to save Tsukumiya near the stage, but he's too late. A barrier goes up between them, leaving her alone on the dark side of the mist. He quickly finds the Onmyoji, looking for his teammate, but since Atsunaga is trapped inside the mist and they can't wait for another team, Takeru ends up being paired with Yura, inside enemy territory. The invading Oni is ready to tear Tsukumiya apart. She's frozen in fear, but Denji's Shikigami arrives just in time to save her life. The Oni survives the blow and escapes through one of his connected escape gates, his signature combat move. Using these multiple portals, he can shoot fire into one and have it come out another, making it nearly impossible for the human duo to predict his attacks. Afraid Tsukumiya will get killed, Takeru shields her with the robot's body, absorbing the monster's flames. But the price is steep. Kazuya warns him that the spiritual reactor's efficiency has dropped to D, and it could fail at any moment. To make matters worse, the Oni is charging up for a devastating final attack, and Yura figures their only option now is to retreat. However, Takeru refuses to take a step back. He can't risk losing Tsukumiya in this battle, so he faces the Oni's unleashed power head-on, absorbing the full impact and, in doing so, reveals the power everyone had been waiting to see. With this newfound strength, he charges straight at the Oni, who still manages to counterattack with a clever move. The Oni steps through one gate and out another behind Takeru, aiming to pierce his torso. But Takeru had already died like this once before he knew exactly what was coming. Anticipating his opponent's next move, he strikes first and claims victory in the duel. As the fight ends, the black mist dissipates, and Takeru feels proud for having saved his beloved Tsukumiya. But not everything is sunshine and roses that day. Out of nowhere, and for no apparent reason, Takeru suddenly starts suffering from some strange reaction, while several identical copies of himself begin to appear as if he were being cloned. Completely confused, Yura leaves the Shikigami, rushing to shake his partner awake. But Takeru won't wake up, no matter what. As things get worse, the Shikigami becomes enveloped by the black mist and springs to life, turning into an Oni of its own, and begins to wreak havoc across the city. Faced with this disaster, Abino Seimei has to step in personally to contain the beast. To do this, he summons Toda, the celestial general of the southeast, who now stands before Takeru. Check out these videos appearing on your screen and subscribe so you don't miss the next part.